What if the story of Adam and Eve is a lie? What if instead of a benevolent God in a garden, our true origin is far more alien and far more terrifying? 6,000 years ago, the most advanced civilization on Earth, the Sumerians, wrote it all down. They spoke of gods who descended from the heavens, not as spirits, but as physical beings. They called them the Anunnaki, and according to these ancient texts, we weren't created in a divine image. We were engineered, genetically modified from primitive apes to become a slave race, designed for one purpose: to mine gold for our extraterrestrial masters. This is the story your history books refuse to tell. They may have lived thousands of years before us, but the ancient Sumerians left behind a treasure trove of their existence, from towering ziggurats to stone tablets containing their cuneiform writing system. This civilization has proven itself to have once walked the earth, even if they did disappear entirely from history. We also know that the Sumerians had a unique collection of mythologies, ones that, for many, contain clues of an extraterrestrial race. In this video, we're taking a deep dive into the Anunnaki, an alien race inextricably linked with the ancient Sumerian civilization of Mesopotamia. For many, these extraterrestrial beings not only masqueraded as gods, but are also the reason why human DNA contains genetic material that isn't of this world. Creation myths around the world. The origin of the universe has long been a source of fascination for us. Science tells us that before there were celestial beings and living organisms, there was a Big Bang, or an explosion of such a massive scale that it ended up creating the world as we know it. Christianity, on the other hand, says that the world was created in 7 days by a benevolent God who ordered things into existence and breathed life into creatures, including us humans. But these aren't the only creation myths that people have believed in. For instance, the ancient Tagalogs of the Philippines claimed that the universe was created when 3 fearsome deities challenged each other for supremacy. For 3 days and 3 nights, they hurled rocks and whatever they could at each other. Once this was over, a tree sprouted from the grave of the slain god, and from it, the world was born. Meanwhile, the Japanese creation myth starts with chaos. In this story, a shapeless chunk of matter suddenly saw movement, which led to the creation of the Takamagahara, or the high plane of heaven. From this came 5 gods and eventually the rest of the universe. There are a ton of creation myths, each one bearing its own set of unique deities and fantastical circumstances. As beautiful and as interesting as they are, many of us believe that these are mere stories, legends, and folktales that our grandparents read to us when we were young. But for our ancient forefathers, these creation myths were more than just stories. For them, these held undeniable truths and secrets of the universe. Not only did such tales allow them to understand the world that they lived in, but they also enabled them to gain more insight into their identities. And perhaps no other creation myth embodies this more than the one told by the Sumerians of ancient Mesopotamia. The Sumerians of ancient Mesopotamia. Before dissecting the Sumerian creation myth and how it relates to us, modern-day humans, it's first important to understand who these people were. According to archaeologists, the ancient Sumerian civilization was a series of city-states built during the 4th millennium BC in Mesopotamia, a region that is now known as the present-day countries of Iraq, Kuwait, Turkey, and Syria. Thanks to the Tigris-Euphrates river system, their communities enjoyed incredibly fertile lands that made farming and harvesting crops easy. The sheer amount of resources that the region provided them with eventually allowed the Sumerians to dominate the ancient world. Uruk, one of its city-states, even became a thriving trading hub. At one point, it was the largest city in the entire world, boasting of a population of at least 40,000, as well as defensive walls and fortifications that ran for over 6 miles. Although the Sumerians lived thousands of years ago, much is known about their civilization and distinct way of life. Archaeological evidence unearthed throughout the years reveals plenty about these people. For instance, they kept meticulous records using a writing system called cuneiform that consisted of wedge-like symbols carved on stone tablets. This civilization is also known for its elaborate architecture, which encompasses breathtaking mosaics, towering brick columns, grandiose palaces, and pyramid-like stepped temples referred to as ziggurats. There are many interesting things about the Sumerian way of life, and our endless fascination with this ancient civilization has only been exacerbated by the mountains of archaeological evidence that they left behind for us to discover. But arguably, one of the most fascinating aspects of ancient Sumerian civilization was the religion that they practiced. Their anthropomorphic polytheism faith led to each city-state worshipping their own deities. There was a core pantheon, though, which consisted of An, or heaven, as well as Utu, the sun god, and Sin, the moon god, among others. These figures are featured heavily in the Sumerian creation myth, where they're portrayed as both rulers and friends of humans. This story was found on a stone tablet that had been dug up from the ancient Mesopotamian city of Nippur, which today lies in southwestern Iraq. This important discovery led archaeologists to claim that Nippur played a critical role in the religious lives of the ancient Sumerians. More than that, though, they believed that it was in this city where the world's first man was made, crafted by Enlil the storm god, who resided there. This is undoubtedly the reason why the Sumerian creation myth was found buried in this city. Painstakingly carved in cuneiform, the story begins like this. When in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name, and the primeval Apsu who begat them, and Chaos, Tiamat, the mother of them both, their waters mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh was to be seen, when of the gods none had been called into being. And none bore a name, and no destinies were ordained. Then were created the gods in the midst of heaven, Lamu and Lahamu were called into being. The myth goes on to claim that the gods came to earth to transform the once uninhabitable place into a paradise. Toiling day and night, it mined its minerals and gathered its resources, working like human beings instead of the divine deities that they were. When it became too much for them to bear, they hatched a plan together that involved creating man to do the labor for them. To do this, they were forced to put a god to death before mixing his blood to form the first ever human being, whom they shaped in their likeness. Interestingly enough, the first man was said to have been created in Eden, a place that means flat terrain in the Sumerian language. Not only is this familiar with those who have read the Christian Bible, but it can also be seen in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which came from ancient Mesopotamia and is widely regarded as the world's oldest written story. However, this creation myth wasn't the only thing that the cuneiform tablets revealed. Rather, they also told peculiar stories of how the gods ended up engaging with the human beings that they initially sought out to subjugate. Not only were they forced to carry out backbreaking labor on behalf of the divine deities, but they were also made to strictly abide by the rules that had been set out for them. The Anunnaki alien race. The stone tablets allegedly called these gods the Annunaki, which means those who came from the heavens. Many claim that they were nothing more than myths, akin to Zeus, Osiris, and the rest of the deities that the ancient world worshipped. But others believe differently. For them, the Anunnaki were actual, tangible beings who came from the mysterious and faraway Planet X or Nibiru, a celestial body that passed Earth millennials ago. Its residents traveled to our world for what was initially a quick visit, but ultimately ended up staying after witnessing the vast resources that we had. In addition to this, they were also enticed by the idea of subjugating the human race, becoming their masters, and forcing them to mine gold, among other things. Once they were satisfied, they released their slaves and returned to Nibiru, never to be heard from again. According to an article published by Wonderopolis, some even go so far as to say the Anunnaki were a species of reptilian humanoids. They believe these reptiles helped the Sumerians develop their systems of writing and mathematics. Further, they think the reptiles are still around today and wield power in the human world. But rather than slavers and masters, the Anunnaki race was held by the Sumerians to be their gods, more specifically as the children of the earth and sky, who deserved to be worshipped, venerated, and praised. This ancient civilization believed that the knowledge and wisdom bestowed to them by these otherworldly creatures were worth the grueling forced labor that they were made to carry out. These beliefs were passed down to the Akkadians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians, all of whom had absorbed the remaining Sumerians, whose way of life had deteriorated over the years. This influence has long been perceived as the reason why the Assyrians held supernatural and mystical forces in high regard. For instance, the gates of their cities were adorned with statues of genii, who purportedly protected all those within the walls. Their images show them as winged creatures with beards and pine cones, from which blessings, in the form of water, flowed out. The Assyrians were also staunch believers in omens and often employed diviners to communicate with their gods. These individuals would read the bumps and grooves on a sheep's liver, which they claimed were actually divine messages. It was the same story in ancient Babylon, who also worshipped the original Sumerian core deities. Many claim that these gods were actually the Anunnaki, mainly because of how this alien race takes its name from the main Mesopotamian deity, Anu the sky god. These are just several of the many compelling arguments that researchers have made over the years to support the idea that the ancient Sumerian gods were actually extraterrestrial beings in disguise. However, other researchers further claim that rather than chancing upon human beings on Earth, the Anunnaki created our race for the sole purpose of mining the planet's resources for them. Once this goal was achieved and man had finished serving its purpose, they were left behind to die off. Only they didn't. Instead, they became the ancient Sumerians, whose alien knowledge eventually gave rise to the mathematics, writing system, and architecture that their civilization has since become known for. Humans, the slave race of the Anunnaki. There's another side to this theory, though. The Anunnaki race is also believed to have gone one step further, genetically engineering the entire human race for the sole purpose of serving as their slave species. Known as the ancient astronaut hypothesis, this claims that extraterrestrial beings have been posing as gods or divine beings to influence humans, like how the Anunnaki passed themselves off as sky gods when giving the ancient Sumerians the building blocks of their scientific knowledge. This idea is undoubtedly compelling, but it would also explain why there are certain weak and unexplainable gaps in the theory of evolution. Additionally, this also paved the way for the theory that human DNA actually contains traces of alien compounds. After all, when the Anunnaki created man, the only genetic material that they had access to were the ones they had themselves. While this is the most popular theory regarding the Anunnaki race, other researchers have drawn their own conclusions from careful analysis of ancient Sumerian mythologies and folklore, as well as translations of the cuneiform tablets that were unearthed from the Mesopotamian city-state of Nippur. For instance, some claim that the other unexplainable structures seen on our planet are actually products of Anunnaki engineering and architecture. Rather than attribute all the mysterious pyramids around the world to ancient civilizations, they instead credit the alien race. This argument is corroborated by allegations that artifacts and tools unearthed on these sites seemed out of place and definitely not of this world. Another theory about the Anunnaki is that they didn't leave planet Earth after obtaining all the gold and resources that they wanted. Rather, many people believe that this alien race continues to manipulate and influence humanity and its various sectors, from politics to corporate and finance. This means that our race is being exploited by a species not of this world, who also feeds off the collective fear that we experience whenever hearing news reports of natural disasters, calamities, and scandals. Because of this, we should reject mainstream media and entertainment, which he believes are being distorted by the Anunnaki to make us feel more terrified and anxious, in the hopes that this will lull us into a hypnotic, more malleable state. Many share these beliefs. For them, the Anunnaki aren't completely gone from this world. Rather, they continue controlling us, playing with our fates, and subjecting us to their every whim. Conclusion: a paradigm shattered, humanity between the garden and the mine. The Anunnaki hypothesis, as drawn from the ancient cuneiform tablets of Sumer, is more than an alternative history. It is a profound and unsettling challenge to the very foundations of human identity. It asks us to trade a comforting, divinely ordained origin for a stark, technologically driven one. The story of Adam and Eve in a blessed garden, created as the pinnacle of a benevolent God's love, is replaced by the story of Adamu in the dust of Mesopotamia, genetically engineered as the pinnacle of an alien master's utility. This is not merely a different version of events, it is a different ontology, a different understanding of what it means to be human. If the Sumerians were not recording myth, but history, then our entire narrative of self, our spirituality, our purpose, our place in the cosmos, must be radically reevaluated. At its core, the Anunnaki narrative forces a collision between spirituality and science, myth and technology. The gods of old are recast not as metaphysical spirits, but as advanced biological beings from a planet, Nibiru, with problems of their own. Their miracles, imparting knowledge, shaping civilization, creating life, are demystified into acts of genetic engineering and technological transfer. The Garden of Eden becomes a laboratory, the forbidden fruit a metaphor for withheld knowledge or genetic potential, and the fall from grace not a moral failure, but an inevitable uprising against servitude. This interpretation does not diminish these ancient stories. Instead, it recontextualizes them with a terrifying plausibility. It suggests that the roots of human religion may lie in the awe and fear inspired by vastly superior beings whose technology was indistinguishable from magic. This paradigm shift offers a compelling, if disturbing, explanation for the great leaps in human evolution and civilization. The sudden emergence of Homo sapiens with its unique cognitive abilities, the inexplicable sophistication of Sumerian astronomy, mathematics, and law, and the global similarities in megalithic architecture. All these anomalies find a potential catalyst in the Anunnaki. The ziggurats were not just temples to distant gods. They could have been landing platforms, control centers, or homing beacons. The detailed knowledge of the solar system, including planets like Neptune and Pluto unseen by the naked eye, was not guesswork, but data provided by teachers from the stars. In this light, human history is not a slow, organic climb from primitivism, but a series of software updates installed by external programmers. The most profound implication, however, is for human consciousness and soul. If we are a designed species, a hybrid of primitive hominid and Anunnaki DNA, what becomes of the concept of a divine spark or an immortal soul? The hypothesis presents a stark possibility. Our intelligence, our yearning for the cosmic, our very sense of being more than animal, might not be a gift from a loving creator, but a side effect of alien tinkering. Our existential dread, our feeling of being somehow misplaced or not fully at home on Earth, could be a genetic memory of our origins, a longing for the stars from which our makers came. This reframes human striving not as a journey back to God, but as an unconscious drive to overcome our programming and claim the legacy of our divine ancestors. Furthermore, the narrative casts a long shadow over modern power structures. The idea that the Anunnaki may not have left, but continue to manipulate humanity from the shadows, feeding on fear and chaos, provides a potent metaphor for the feeling of powerlessness in the face of global, unaccountable systems. Whether taken literally or symbolically, it suggests that the hierarchies, wars, and economic exploitation that plague our history are not merely human failures, but could be the enduring architecture of a control system established millennia ago. The slave race mentality of being born to serve a purpose not our own echoes in the modern anxieties of being cogs in a vast, impersonal machine. Yet, within this terrifying premise lies the seed of ultimate liberation. The very act of questioning our origins is an act of rebellion against the intended order. If we were created to be slaves, then to seek truth is to disobey. To advance our science to the point where we can decipher our own genetics and contemplate star travel is to overturn the master's plan. The human spirit, in this view, is defined not by its origin, but by its refusal to be confined by it. Our art, our compassion, our relentless curiosity, these could be the traits that prove the experiment went awry. We were designed to mine gold, but we looked up and painted the stars. We were built for labor, but we composed symphonies and sought love. This divergence from our programmed purpose is the true mark of our potential greatness. Ultimately, whether one accepts the Anunnaki hypothesis as literal truth, powerful metaphor, or mere science fiction, its value is undeniable. It serves as a crucial thought experiment that forces us to question everything we think we know. It holds up a mirror to our creation myths and asks, does this story serve us, or does it keep us docile? It challenges the official narratives of history and science, advocating for a broader, more interdisciplinary view of our past. It transforms human history from a closed book into an ongoing mystery, with clues buried in our oldest texts and our very DNA. The story of the Anunnaki does not necessarily rob life of meaning. It proposes a more difficult but perhaps more authentic meaning. Our purpose is not preordained by a benevolent father or a slave-making engineer. It is ours to create. We are the products of a mysterious past, possibly shaped by alien hands, but our future remains unwritten. The choice is ours, to remain unconscious of our origins and potentially slaves to cycles we do not understand, or to awaken, question, and strive to become the masters of our own destiny, to evolve from the engineered inhabitants of Earth to the conscious citizens of the cosmos. The truth, as terrifying as it may be, is the first step toward true sovereignty. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I love hearing from you. Check out more videos on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.